Hi y'all, Daisy Dreamin' here. Thanks for joining me on something a little different than my usual stop motion. Side note, don't worry, there will still be stop motion videos on Sundays at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, at least on every Sunday that I have one to share. In this video, I'm starting the brand new Tiny Town challenge created by Deligracy. I will provide links in the description to her channel and to her website where this channel is listed so you can check it out. In the meantime, a quick rundown. Tiny Town Challenge is somewhat of a rags to riches challenge, but focuses primarily on specific skills in the game. Tiny Town is a large lot separated into 7 mini lots, one for each of 7 sims. The goal is for each sim to build their own tiny home using the income from their skill. Each sim has their own color, decor, design style, and skill. The selected sim will use their skill in order to fund the build and design of their own tiny home. I have added 2 additional requirements for my own gameplay, which are number 1, they must max out their selected skill, and number 2, they must complete the chosen aspiration for that sim and skill. Another small change I made is to occasionally use our satisfaction points to buy potions. For instance, if Azure was up all night painting, I purchased her the sleep replacement from the rewards store using the points that she's earned. I don't do this every day, and I hope it's not considered cheating since it's something that she earned by doing her skill, and doesn't use any simoleons or cheat codes. I'll just be randomly choosing which sim to work with, at least until after Frank Stem, the gardener, so I don't end up stuck trying to play him in winter when he can't plant anything. Ultimately, Tiny Town will be filled with 7 individual tiny homes for these 7 townspeople, as well as a community space or spaces that is added to by each sim and enjoyed by the Tiny Town community. Throughout the challenge, the lot will be residential, and as we move to the next sim in the list, we'll turn the previous sim into a roommate by using the roommate system that comes with Discover University. This way, each completed sim will still live on the lot in their specific home, and they'll contribute to the overall household funds by paying their rent. While we're on the topic of rent, there is a hidden basement area with the safe from Get Famous. Money made for the lot as a whole, like through rent payments and such, will be moved into the safe to keep the household money separate from the amount the current sim has earned for their house and area and their needs. Once we have finished the challenge, it might be fun to change the lot to a residential rental if you have the for rent pack, and separate each more effectively. But while we're still playing and going in and out of build mode, the for rent pack is just too buggy in my opinion. Hopefully that makes sense, or makes sense as we go along at least. Again, for more information on the rules and gameplay of this challenge, check out Deligracy's website or her channel. Links are below. Let's get started. In this first episode of my Tiny Town challenge, I chose Azure Hue, mostly because that's who Deligracy started out with and because of the Frank Stem gardening thing I mentioned earlier. I chose to create my own Azure per my own taste, but Deli does have her sims on the gallery for download if you're interested. Azure has the painting skill. She likes contemporary / boho design, and she likes the color blue. As such, my Azure has blue hair and bright blue eyes, and of course her blue-themed boho-styled wardrobe. Her traits are creative, art lover, and perfectionist, and she has the painter extraordinaire aspiration. Her chosen likes and dislikes include, but are not limited to, the color blue, boho fashion, music from different cultures and countries, and of course, she likes to paint, among other things. Now for the lot, I did download Deli's lot to start out with, but we'll build my own homes and community spaces as we go through the challenge. The main lot is pretty barren at first and has the simple living trait, meaning we can only eat, for example, with food that we grow, catch, buy at the grocery store, water we collect from streams, etc. I have also added the off-the-grid lot trait to mine as well because why not? So my sims will have to furnish with off-the-grid items and or use solar panels, dew collectors, generators, etc. for plumbing and electricity. This main lot is sectioned into 7 mini lots with a large area in the middle. We will use this large area to build spaces such as a community garden, maybe a public bathroom, reading and lounging spaces, etc. We will decorate the community spaces with items from our skills to use as they are, or the current sim could could use to decorate their own home with. For instance, they could take a painting that Azure painted and put it in their own house to decorate with and not have to spend any money. Each sim will add to the community space in some ways as we go. Azure's individual lot when we start is set up the way each sim's will be, with a couple of flower plants and trees in their signature color. A lot of mess we will need to clean up along the way, and a small fenced-in area with a few things to start out with. We are given an item or items to build our skill, and a few collectibles from the game that we can immediately sell to get a little money to begin with. We begin with Azure in spring. We jump right out of the gate with some drama, as by trying to set the season and the day, I chose to use a mod only the initial setup for the first day of the season. In doing so, I forgot to make sure she was dressed correctly for the still snowy weather, and she died. So I started all over and moved Azure into her little lot. I used the money cheat to empty our funds, and we have 0 simoleons. Azure grabbed the 3 items and sold them immediately to make enough to start our first painting. Now, I don't know if it was the Grim Reaper or what, but something put her in a flirty mood. So I guess we're going to start out with a flirty painting for the first one. I mean, she is really hot and bothered. After what seemed like an absolute eternity, she finished her very first painting of stick figures in love, apparently, and then we realized that it cost us $50 to make the painting, and since technically it was just stick figures, the art collector decided he wasn't going to give us very much for it. So, for the moment, Azure decides she's going to list it on Plopsy. Of course, being a perfectionist, this makes her immediately tense, not to mention broke, and we don't have enough to make another painting. So now she must set off to dig into the frozen hard ground to try to find some collectibles that she can sell to maybe get back to painting and making some real money. She headed over to a nearby community garden, found some charming mushrooms and a lady walking around half naked. After unsuccessfully recommending that maybe she put some clothes on in this cold weather, it was time to head back out and find more collectibles to make some more simoleons. She met a man who claimed to be the mayor of Henford-on-Bagley. But after he failed to show any form of identification, she sent him on his way. We stopped to grab some free granola from our cooler before using the money that we found to start painting again. To Azure's surprise, the next painting got her $75, a happy improvement, and we're well on our way. Next, it was time to fertilize a bush. Unfortunately, ours was out of order, so she hopped on over to use the neighbor's, since we don't have a neighbor, and then back to work. While creating a horse painting reminiscent of her 2nd grade art class, she got the notification that someone wanted to buy her painting on Plopsy and gave her 190 simoleons for it. After another bowl of free granola, it was time for her first night's sleep in her tent under the stars. Azure woke up and fertilized a bush, and I cleaned up the lot a little. I put a roof over the little area so that she could paint out of the rain, and bought us a sink so that she could wash her hands to get hygiene up a little until we're able to afford a shower. Once all of her needs were met, it was time to start another painting. Just in time for bills to be dropped off to the tune of 1,307 simoleons. Her lion painting was marginally better than her horse painting the evening before, and she chose to go ahead and sell it to a collector for 172 simoleons, hardly making a dent in her overall financial needs. But Azure still felt optimistic, knowing that the more that she painted, the better her skill would get and start bringing in some money. More free granola, a quick refresh of hygiene, and the next painting was enough to help her complete her first milestone in the painter extraordinaire aspiration. As well as reaching level 4 of the skill. Another sale to the art collector earned her another 158 simoleons. Not bad, but still so far away from anything helpful to her pocketbook.
Help me, I'm poor.
While on her way to try fishing again, there was another sighting of the elusive, naked creature out in the wild. The fish may not have been biting, but the Plopsy shoppers sure were. When her line broke for the umpteenth time, she decided to call it a day, sell the collectibles she had gathered, and run home to ship off the painting. I fixed her out-of-order bush, so she fertilized it, filled her hygiene needs, and grabbed yet another bowl of freebie food from the cooler. Being in a focused mood, her next painting was a mathematical diagram. It wasn't worth a lot of money, but it did increase her painting skill and also gave her the logic skill. She spent a little bit more money and bought herself a refrigerator to put leftovers in so that her food goes farther, and got a radio so that she could listen to classical or focused music, which will help increase her chances of creating a masterpiece. After staying up all night painting, she used her satisfaction points to get a sleep replacement potion, and then added the second of 2 paintings to her inventory that she'll sell later on. Next, she grilled herself some fruit, which gave her breakfast for now and free leftovers for the next few meals. Which must have been fate, because the land grab power company was breathing down her neck for payment. Then it was time for more digging and more harvesting. She bred 2 frogs that she found and was able to sell off the extra. And then she sold a fossil she found, a total of 60 more simoleons. Next, she thought she'd try fishing again, and the rain must have been good luck because she leveled up her fishing skill and she finally got a bite. Ultimately, for the day, she caught the perch and tuna, you know, those infamous pond tunas, I guess, and a future cube. She decided to keep the fish for now, but the cube got her 325 simoleons. In an effort to prettify her sad little lot, she planted some of the roses and the daisies that she got while gardening today. She fertilized her new plants, as well as her bush, just in time for her to greet the so-called mayor of Henford-on-Bagley, who stopped by again. She asked him if he had his ID this time. He asked why she was peeing in a bush, and they both went away without answers. She managed to paint a very good, but also very creepy, clown painting, grabbed some leftovers, and hunkered down for another night in the tent. The next morning, surprise, surprise, it's still raining. As if that wasn't bad enough, she also found that the land grab company had turned off her power, and all of her leftovers had spoiled. She was really starting to stink at this point, but luckily the land grab company hadn't turned off the water just yet, so she was able to wash her hands and brush her teeth to get as clean as she could for the day. She painted 3 more paintings, including another creepy clown, and after another quick whiz in the shrubbery, she felt she finally had enough to carry to San Myshuno and try to sell on the street. Surprisingly, the first one sold for 453 simoleons and the next for 699. And though she didn't sell any more, she still chalked it up to a decent night. Back home, she grilled a quick meal, and then we were finally able to build a small structure. It wasn't much, and we had to repurpose the roof from before, but hey, there were walls and a roof. Her home makeover also didn't leave enough for a toilet, and our bush was still dirty from before, so we were stuck using the neighbors again, but we finally got a real shower before bed. It was then that the land grab company shut off the water, and we realized we probably should have paid some bills instead of renovating the house. With her leftovers spoiled, it was back to granola from the cooler, but she gained the handiness skill from the broken sink that was somehow spraying water even though it had been shut off. She went out in the beautiful spring day to grab some more harvestables and ran across this fine young gentleman named Tate Parker. She didn't really have time for piddling around, but she had grown really tired of talking to creepy clowns she painted and decided to chat a bit with him. During their chat, she received a call from a lady named Polly, who said Azure's great-great-grand-second, once removed, cousin's friend's grandpa had left her a vast fortune when he passed away. Polly asked if she'd accept, and since she wasn't born yesterday, Azure asked what conditions had to be met first. It must have been a trick because Polly called her clever and said, Well, there were conditions, but one of the conditions was that there would be no conditions if you asked if there were conditions. So there are no conditions. Wait, right? Then Polly sighed in her confusion and told Azure she'd be wiring her 2,500 simoleons. She said goodbye to her handsome new friend and headed back to Tinytown. She arrived back home, paid her bills, and finally got the utilities turned back on. Even though she still had 1,200 simoleons from her earnings today, she knew she needed much more and decided to paint some more for another street sale. She added a few more paintings to her inventory before putting another day to bed. And like a movie about Groundhog Day, it was fertilize the bush, eat some leftovers, take a shower, and after a few hours she had a few more paintings to add to her stash. While painting through the day, she kept smelling something awful. When she went to sell some of the collectibles, she saw that she still had those fish she caught earlier.
Ew!
Then she was really surprised to learn that they still sell even when they're foul. But hey, money's money, am I right? Her new friend Tate stopped by, so she shared some of her leftovers and they spent some time talking and getting to know each other. He asked her about her painting and gave her a bunch of compliments on the one she was working on, even though it was very obviously a Rorschach ink block test. They had a great chat otherwise, and it was really nice to get to know one another. After Tate left, she finished her painting, filled her needs, and headed back out to the city to try and make some money. She must have had her prices too high because she had wave after wave of customers check her out and then leave. And then celebrity Brittany Cho had to show up and make it all about her as usual. Brittany wasn't too much of a distraction though, because Azure was then able to sell 3 more of her paintings and ended the evening with a total of 3,374 simoleons. After what will end up being her last night's sleep in the tent and a quick needs refresh, we used our small bit of earnings to expand the home just a little and finally got a bed indoors and a real toilet that doesn't give her any splinters at all. She headed back to San Myshuno to try to start selling her art inside the gallery this time and was surprised to run into a lady in nothing but her undies. Undeterred, she threw her sales pitch at anyone willing to hear it and was actually able to sell every piece this time. She grabbed a quick bite to eat from one of the food stalls and then thought she would try her hand at painting a mural to help fulfill one of her aspiration requirements. With the mural all finished and looking quite good if you ask me, she headed over to the easel right there in the city and did a little street painting and grabbed a stranger on the street to show off her work as another aspiration requirement. Unfortunately, he wasn't impressed, so she took her painting and her bruised ego and headed home. Not long after she got home, her handsome friend Tate stopped by again. She hung up her painting and showed it to him, and maybe he was just trying to be nice, or maybe he was hoping for a little romance. Either way, it worked on Azure, because soon they were tickling and kissing. And then they found they had water conservation in common and shared a shower. Tate must have been a bit of a good luck charm because after he left, she painted her first masterpiece. She sold it to an art gallery for 748 simoleons and chalked it up to another successful evening. The next morning, after a refresh of all of her needs and a quick DIY sink repair, she resumed painting the still ever-growing number of paintings she will ultimately need to complete the challenge. The next one, another masterpiece, she liked so much she decided to just keep it for herself and make her home a little less sad. She finished one painting after another to stock up her inventory for her next street sale. At this point, her painting skill had improved so much, she painted one masterpiece after another. For this sale, though, she decided to travel to a museum so she could knock out the next aspiration step with admiring some art pieces. And then she headed to the rooftop to paint more of her stock in the moonlight. She purchased another sleep replacement potion and headed to a nearby park where she caught a frog and grilled some lunch. She was pleasantly surprised with a phone call from Tate, who was calling with all of his audacity to ask her for advice on asking another girl on a date.
I'm sorry, what?
The audacity.
And then she resumed her lunch and headed back to the museum for another street sale. The undies lady stopped by again, still not buying anything, but, in her defense, she didn't have pockets. This time, she was able to sell painting after painting without any issues and had lots of happy customers. At the end of the night, she walked away with a total of 28,000 simoleons. After filling her needs and putting her to bed, I was finally able to take the money we had earned to build our tiny home in our little neck of Tinytown. So here we are with the finished home. It's a tiny home done in blues and boho style to meet the challenge requirements. It's 1 bed and 1 bath with an easel inside for when the weather is bad. There's plenty of color, mostly blue of course, and a mix of different decor style, and of course lots of plants. On days like today, however, Azure enjoys painting up in the artist loft, and she finds plenty of inspiration to create masterpieces with a view such as this one. Just a couple of more paintings and she finally completed the next milestone for the aspiration. Not too far to go now. Later, while enjoying her dinner, Mr. Audacity himself thought he would call and ask her to be his date to the romance festival. She told him to kick rocks, of course, but he had given her a great idea for her evening. She was going to go to the romance festival by herself, and who knows, maybe she'll make a new friend. And what do you know, the minute she arrived, she spotted a good-looking guy with long hair, and she could tell just by the looks of him he seemed totally her type. Not a bit shy, she introduced herself and learned his name was Mitchell Kalani. They got to know each other while walking around, drinking Sakura tea, talking to the love guru, and so on. She could tell he was into her too, so it was no surprise when they got totally swept up in the ambiance and shared their first kiss. Back to painting, painting, and more painting. She raised her skill and even gained a level of fame. Oh, look who it is. She just laughed to herself, remembering Mitchell, and rejected the call. She painted several more until she was 1 level away from maxing her skill and had to paint 4 more masterpieces to finally complete the challenge. The next day, she gave Tate the "It's not me, it's you" speech because he clearly cannot take a hint. Just about that time, Mitchell showed up, which made Azure's whole day. He told her he knew of Tate and had heard the rumors of what a player he is. He suggested they pick up where they left off, right here in the center of town, and she totally agreed. In fact, she suggested one better and offered to give him a tour of the town, spending some extra one-on-one time in the shrubbery. Later, Mitchell called Azure and said he enjoyed being around her so much he thought they should move in together. Since she had just built her home in Tinytown, they agreed he'd move in with her. He took his portion of the roomie's household funds and immediately got a job in the local area as a chef. That night they christened her new bed, which was a much more private experience with less branches and twigs and unknown spaces than earlier. The next day, Mitchell was off to work and Azure was back to painting. Azure thought now that she had completed her tiny home, she would start using her funds to improve the town a little. She started with a community garden that she set up with plenty of plots and donated a few plants she had gathered on her travels. Those dragon fruit make pretty good money and will hopefully help out any new neighbors when they're first starting out. Mitchell said he knew how busy she was trying to knock out those last few masterpieces and offered to take care of the gardening while she did so. Besides, while she was busy painting, he had also been busy working out the perfect surprise.
Oh no!
Bumbo.
She said yes, of course, and it looks like Tate finally took a hint. She finished her last painting, which was another masterpiece, and there we have it, y'all. Azure Hue's part of the challenge is complete. Mitchell and Azure had a beautiful beach wedding, attended by their closest friends. And headed back to their little love nest. They decided to do their honeymoon after another townsperson moved in, and in the meantime they used more of their earnings to add more to the community. All in all, she donated the garden, a couple of public restrooms with showers, and a cozy little reading nook to find shelter and stay warm on cold days like the ones that she had experienced. She also hung some of her own paintings for them to grab and use in their own homes if they wanted. She provided a dew collector and solar panels to help generate some power and water so the town could be fully off the grid and self-sustainable. And finally, she installed the bank vault in a hidden spot underground so the townspeople can use it to put their money together to pay all of the town's expenses. So that's it, y'all. That's part 1 of my Tiny Town Challenge. I hope you enjoyed this first video and come back soon for the next. I'll be taking Deligracy's lead and moving in with Beatrice Jam as my second neighbor, mostly because I just love the tiny home that Deli made for her, and I plan to completely rip it off and make mine exactly like it. Continue checking out our additions to the town. I hope you enjoy. Thank y'all so much for being here. If you liked the video, please hit that like button and tell the algorithm that you enjoyed it. It really helps me out. And be sure to subscribe if you're not already so you know when I post these videos or a stop motion one. Again, thank y'all so much. I had so much fun. Dag dag.
Mago.